Hello sleepy philosophers, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey through the mind of one of history's most profound thinkers, a man who ruled an empire yet found his greatest battles within himself. This is Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor whose private thoughts became humanity's guide to living well. As you settle into your pillow and let the day's worries fade, we'll explore his timeless insights together, slowly and peacefully, allowing his wisdom to wash over you like a calm tide. If you find these philosophical wanderings helpful for your evening, consider giving this video a gentle like and subscribing to Sleepy Philosophy. Your support helps so much more than you know, and I'm forever grateful for every listener who joins our quiet community. Now, I should probably warn you that I hope this video isn't too interesting. After all, the goal here is relaxation and perhaps a drift towards sleep. But if you do find yourself lying awake, captivated by the thoughts of this ancient emperor, at least you'll emerge with some profound insights about life, death, and the art of living well. So let your breathing slow, allow your muscles to soften, and prepare to meet Marcus Aurelius not as a distant historical figure, but as a thoughtful companion for your journey into rest. Imagine, if you will, the most powerful man in the ancient world sitting alone in his tent on the edges of a war-torn frontier. Outside, the sounds of a military camp settling into evening quiet. Inside, by flickering candlelight, the Emperor of Rome takes up his pen and begins to write. Not proclamations or battle plans, but intimate reflections on how to be human. These private musings, never intended for publication, would become one of philosophy's most treasured gifts to humanity, his meditations. Marcus Aurelius lived from 121 to 180 CE, during what historians call the height of Roman power. Yet this man, who commanded legions and governed vast territories, was far more interested in commanding himself. He belonged to a school of philosophy called Stoicism, which taught that true freedom comes not from controlling the world around us, but from mastering our responses to that world. It's a philosophy perfectly suited for quiet contemplation as the day draws to a close. The beauty of Aurelius's wisdom lies in its gentle practicality. He wasn't writing abstract theories from an ivory tower. He was a man dealing with plague, war, political intrigue, and personal loss, yet finding ways to maintain inner peace and moral clarity. His philosophy emerges from real struggle, real doubt, and real human experience. This makes his insights not just intellectually interesting, but deeply comforting to anyone facing life's inevitable challenges. At the heart of Marcus Aurelius's philosophy lies a simple yet profound recognition. We are part of something infinitely larger than ourselves. He writes about the universe as a single living organism, where each of us plays a small but meaningful role. Like cells in a vast body, we're connected to everything around us, and this connection gives our lives both purpose and perspective. When you're lying there tonight, feeling the weight of your own concerns, remember that you're part of this grand cosmic dance that has been unfolding for billions of years. This perspective naturally leads to one of his most soothing concepts, the discipline of perception. Aurelius understood that our suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our judgments about those events. The traffic jam isn't inherently stressful, the difficult conversation isn't inherently painful, the change in plans isn't inherently frustrating. These are simply things that happen. Our stress, pain, and frustration come from the stories we tell ourselves about what these things mean. This doesn't mean we should become emotionless or indifferent. Rather, Aurelius invites us to observe our initial reactions with gentle curiosity. When something upsets us, we can pause and ask, what judgment am I adding to this situation? What story am I telling myself that might not be true? This practice of stepping back from our immediate emotional responses creates a space of calm, a quiet moment where wisdom can emerge. Consider how this applies to the very act of falling asleep. How often do we lie in bed, mind racing with tomorrow's worries or today's regrets? Aurelius would suggest that these anxious thoughts are not facts about reality, but mental additions we're making to simple present moment awareness. The bed is comfortable, your body is safe, your breath is steady. The worry about tomorrow's meeting or regret about today's conversation are mental constructs, stories layered on top of what actually is. This leads us naturally to another cornerstone of his philosophy, the practice of present moment awareness. Aurelius constantly reminds himself that the past exists only in memory and the future only in imagination. The only time we actually possess is this very moment, this single breath, this heartbeat, this blink of consciousness. Everything else is mental fabrication. He writes beautifully about morning rituals, about greeting each day with gratitude and intention. But equally important are his evening reflections, the practice of reviewing the day not with harsh judgment, but with gentle honesty. What went well? Where did I act in accordance with my values? Where did I fall short? And what can I learn from that? This isn't self-criticism, but self-understanding, a kind way of learning from experience. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might try this gentle practice of daily review. Not to judge yourself harshly, but to appreciate the small moments where you acted with kindness, courage, or wisdom. And for the moments that didn't go as well, simply notice them with compassion, like a good friend offering gentle guidance rather than harsh criticism. The emperor understood something profound about human nature. We are social beings, interconnected in ways both obvious and subtle. His philosophy emphasizes our duty to contribute to the common good, to serve others not out of obligation but out of recognition that their well-being and ours are intimately connected. When we help others flourish, we create the conditions for our own flourishing. But this service doesn't require grand gestures or heroic acts. Aurelius found meaning in small kindnesses, in patience with difficult people, in doing his daily work with integrity and care. He reminds us that we can practice philosophy in the marketplace, in our homes, in our everyday interactions. The checkout clerk who remains patient with a difficult customer, the parent who listens with genuine attention to a child's concerns, the friend who offers presents rather than advice to someone in pain, all of these are expressions of philosophical wisdom. This gentle approach to virtue makes Aurelius's philosophy particularly soothing for bedtime reflection. Rather than demanding perfection, he encourages progress. Rather than harsh self-judgment, he models self-compassion. His wisdom whispers rather than shouts, invites rather than demands, guides rather than forces. One of his most beautiful insights concerns the nature of difficulties and obstacles. Where most of us see problems as impediments to our happiness or success, Aurelius teaches us to see them as opportunities for growth. This isn't positive thinking or denial, but a profound shift in perspective. The difficult conversation becomes a chance to practice patience and understanding. The unexpected change becomes an opportunity to practice adaptability and acceptance. The loss becomes a teacher of gratitude and impermanence. This doesn't mean we should seek out suffering or pretend that painful experiences aren't painful. Rather, when difficulties arise, as they inevitably do, we can meet them with curiosity rather than resistance. What might this experience teach me? How might it help me develop qualities I value like courage, compassion, or resilience? As you lie there tonight, perhaps there's something in your life that feels challenging or difficult. Instead of pushing the thought away or getting caught up in worry, try approaching it with Aurelius's gentle wisdom. What if this situation, however unpleasant, might somehow serve your growth? What qualities is it inviting you to develop? This isn't about forcing optimism, but about opening to the possibility that even difficult experiences have something to offer. The philosopher-emperor also understood the profound importance of accepting what he called the natural order of things. Seasons change, bodies age, relationships evolve, circumstances shift. This isn't something to fight against, but something to flow with. Like a tree that bends with the wind rather than breaking, we can learn to move with life's changes rather than rigidly resisting them. This acceptance extends to perhaps the most fundamental fact of human existence, our mortality. Aurelius writes frequently about death, not in a morbid way, but as a natural part of life's rhythm. Understanding that our time here is limited doesn't make life less precious. It makes it more so. Each moment becomes a gift, each interaction an opportunity, each breath a quiet miracle. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, which is itself a small practice of letting go, you might reflect on this gentle wisdom about impermanence. The day that's ending will never come again, but it has given you whatever experiences it held. Tomorrow will bring new possibilities, new moments to practice wisdom and kindness. And this very moment, suspended between day and night, offers its own quiet perfection. The emperor's philosophy also embraces a beautiful paradox. We are simultaneously insignificant specks in a vast universe and precious, irreplaceable expressions of cosmic creativity. We matter immensely and not at all. This perspective can be deeply liberating. It relieves us of the burden of taking ourselves too seriously, while reminding us that we have genuine opportunities to contribute to the beautiful unfolding of existence. This cosmic perspective naturally flows into one of Marcus Aurelius's most comforting teachings, the discipline of desire. The emperor understood that much of our restlessness comes from wanting things to be different than they are. We wish for better weather, different circumstances, other people to behave as we think they should. This constant wanting creates a subtle tension, a background hum of dissatisfaction that can keep us awake at night, mentally wrestling with reality itself. But Aurelius offers us a different way. Instead of demanding that the world conform to our preferences, we can learn to align our desires with what actually is. This doesn't mean becoming passive or giving up on positive change. Rather, it means distinguishing between what we can influence and what we cannot, then directing our energy accordingly. The weather will do what weather does. Other people will make their own choices. Our bodies will age and change. These are facts of existence, not personal affronts. What we can influence is our response to these unchangeable realities. We can choose patience over irritation, acceptance over resistance, curiosity over judgment. This shift from fighting reality to working with it creates a profound sense of peace, a kind of deep calm that makes sleep come naturally. Think of how this applies to those moments when you're lying in bed and your mind starts cataloguing everything that went wrong during the day or everything that might go wrong tomorrow. Aurelius would gently remind us that these mental gymnastics are forms of desire, wanting the past to have been different or the future to unfold according to our plans. But the past is complete, and the future hasn't arrived. What we have is this moment, this breath, this opportunity to practice acceptance. The philosopher Emperor also wrote extensively about what he called the inner citadel, that quiet space within us that remains untouchable regardless of external circumstances. Imagine a fortress at the centre of your being, a place that no storm can reach, no criticism can penetrate, no loss can destroy. This isn't about building walls or becoming defensive. It's about recognizing that there's something essential within you that remains constant even as everything else changes. This inner citadel isn't built through effort or achievement. It's discovered through stillness, through turning attention inward and recognizing the quiet observer that witnesses all your thoughts and feelings without being disturbed by them. When you notice yourself getting caught up in worry or regret, you can retreat to this inner space, this place of fundamental okayness that exists beneath all the surface turbulence. As you lie there now, you might sense this quiet center within yourself. Behind all the thoughts about tomorrow's responsibilities or today's disappointments, there's a spacious awareness that remains untroubled. Your breathing continues steadily, your heart beats its reliable rhythm, and somewhere deep within, there's a quality of peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being any particular way. Marcus Aurelius understood that this inner stability becomes the foundation for genuine service to others. When we're not constantly buffeted by our own emotional reactions, we can respond to life's challenges with clarity and compassion. We become like a mountain lake, clear and still enough to reflect the sky accurately, rather than a choppy sea that distorts everything it mirrors. This quality of inner stillness naturally leads to another of his profound insights, the practice of memento mori, remembering death. Before you think this sounds morbid for bedtime listening, consider how Aurelius approached mortality. For him, remembering that life is temporary wasn't meant to create anxiety, but to inspire gratitude and focus. When we truly understand that our time here is limited, we stop wasting energy on petty concerns and start appreciating the simple miracle of being alive. Each sunset becomes more beautiful when we remember there will be a finite number of them. Each conversation with a loved one becomes more precious when we recognize that these moments won't last forever. Each ordinary day becomes extraordinary when viewed through the lens of mortality. This isn't about becoming morbid or anxious, but about developing what we might call a healthy urgency, a gentle motivation to live fully and love well. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might reflect on the simple fact that you're here, conscious and breathing, able to contemplate these ancient wisdom teachings. Billions of years of cosmic evolution have conspired to create this moment of awareness. You are, quite literally, the universe becoming conscious of itself, if only briefly. This perspective can transform even the most ordinary evening into something sacred. The Emperor also wrote beautifully about what he called sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things. He saw the universe as a single organism, where every part affects every other part. Your thoughts influence your actions, which influence others, which ripple out in ways you may never know. The kindness you showed to a stranger this morning might have changed the course of their entire day. The patience you practiced in traffic might have prevented an accident. The love you expressed to a family member might have given them strength to face their ownedness, can be deeply comforting when challenges. This understanding of interconnect we're feeling isolated or insignificant. You're not separate from the world around you, struggling alone against indifferent forces. You're part of the great web of existence, connected to every other consciousness that has ever lived or will live. Your joys and sorrows matter because they are part of the larger symphony of being. Your small acts of kindness contribute to the healing of the world. Your moments of peace add to the collective calm. From this perspective of cosmic connection flows one of Aurelius's most practical teachings, the discipline of action. The philosopher Emperor understood that good intentions mean nothing without implementation. Wisdom that remains merely intellectual is incomplete. The insights we gain through reflection must be expressed through our choices and behaviours. But Aurelius advocates for a particular kind of action, purposeful yet unattached, engaged yet peaceful. We do what needs to be done without clinging desperately to specific outcomes. We plant seeds without demanding that they grow in exactly the way we envision. We offer our gifts without insisting that they be received in a particular manner. This approach to action is both effective and sustainable, allowing us to contribute meaningfully while maintaining inner equilibrium. Think about how this might transform your approach to tomorrow's activities. Instead of approaching your day with a tight grip on how everything should unfold, you might hold your plans lightly, ready to adapt when circumstances require flexibility. Instead of measuring your worth by external achievements, you might find satisfaction in knowing you showed up fully, whatever the results. This wisdom extends naturally to our relationships with others. Aurelius recognized that we cannot control how people respond to us, but we can control how we choose to show up. We can offer genuine presence without demanding reciprocation. We can extend forgiveness without requiring apology. We can express love without expecting it to be returned in specific ways. This doesn't make us doormats, but rather people who act from a place of inner fullness rather than outer neediness. The Emperor's reflections on human nature reveal a profound understanding of our shared struggles. He writes with compassion about people's tendency towards selfishness, their capacity for irrationality, their frequent failure to live up to their own ideals. But rather than becoming cynical, he develops patience. He recognizes that everyone is doing their best from their current level of understanding, even when that best falls short of what we might hope for. This perspective can be particularly soothing when we're lying awake, replaying difficult interactions from our day. Instead of rehearsing resentments or planning confrontations, we might try seeing challenging people through Aurelius's compassionate eyes. That person who was rude to you might have been struggling with their own pain. The colleague who seemed selfish might have been acting from fear or insecurity. The family member who disappointed you might have been doing the best they could with their current resources. This doesn't mean we should accept harmful behaviour or fail to set appropriate boundaries. Rather, it means we can respond to difficulties from a place of understanding rather than reactivity, wisdom rather than emotion, strength rather than defensiveness. This approach often leads to better outcomes and always leads to greater inner peace. As the night deepens around you, these ancient insights begin to weave together into a comprehensive approach to living. Marcus Aurelius offers us not just philosophical concepts, but a way of being that encompasses every aspect of human experience. His wisdom touches how we wake up in the morning and how we settle into sleep at night, how we handle success and how we navigate failure, how we relate to others and how we understand ourselves. The beauty of his teachings lies in their gentleness. This is not a philosophy that demands perfection or punishes failure. It's an invitation to gradual awakening, to slow but steady growth in wisdom and compassion. Like water wearing smooth or rough stone, the daily practice of these insights gradually transforms us, not through force, but through persistent, gentle attention. Tonight, as sleep approaches, You might allow these teachings to settle into your consciousness like seeds in fertile soil. There's no need to grasp them tightly or worry about remembering every detail. Wisdom has its own way of taking root, growing quietly in the darkness of rest, emerging when we need it most. The Emperor's insights will be there when you wake, ready to guide another day of conscious living, another opportunity to practice the ancient art of being fully human. In this gentle space between waking and sleeping, let us explore another dimension of Marcus Aurelius's wisdom, one that speaks directly to the quiet hours when our minds seek peace. The Emperor understood something profound about the rhythm of human existence, the natural ebb and flow that governs not just our days, but our entire lives. He recognized that just as the universe expands and contracts in great cosmic breaths, so too do our individual experiences move between activity and rest, engagement and withdrawal, effort and surrender. This understanding led him to develop what we might call a philosophy of cycles. Unlike our modern world's obsession with constant productivity and endless growth, Aurelius embraced the wisdom of seasons. He knew that periods of intense activity must be balanced with times of reflection and restoration. The general who led armies across vast territories also valued the quiet moments in his tent, pen in hand, exploring the landscape of his own mind. As you lie there now, you're participating in this ancient rhythm, this necessary pause that allows consciousness to process and integrate the day's experiences. Sleep isn't simply the absence of waking, but rather a different kind of presence, a journey into inner territories that remain largely hidden during our busy daylight hours. Aurelius would have appreciated this nightly retreat, this gentle surrender to the natural cycles that govern all living things. The philosopher Emperor also developed a remarkable practice of what we might call philosophical hygiene, a daily cleansing of the mind similar to how we cleanse the body. Just as we wash away the physical residue of the day, he believed we must also clear away the mental and emotional debris that accumulates through our interactions with the world. Resentments, worries, petty irritations, and unnecessary desires all cling to consciousness like dust clouding our natural clarity. This mental cleansing doesn't require harsh scrubbing or violent purging. Instead, Aurelius advocated for a gentle recognition and release, like allowing muddy water to settle until it runs clear again. When troubling thoughts arise, we don't fight them or judge ourselves for having them. We simply observe them with the same detached interest we might show toward clouds passing across the sky. They come, they linger for a while, and then they dissolve back into the vast space from which they emerged. Perhaps right now, as you listen to these words, you can practice this gentle letting go. Notice any tensions from the day that still cling to your body or mind. The frustration from that delayed meeting, the anxiety about an upcoming decision, the sadness over a friend's troubles. These emotional residues need not be carried into sleep. Like removing uncomfortable clothes at the end of a long day, you can simply allow these feelings to fall away, acknowledging them without being defined by them. This process of release connects to another beautiful aspect of Aurelius's philosophy, his understanding of identity. The Emperor recognized that we are not our thoughts, our emotions, our circumstances, or even our roles in life. These are temporary costumes we wear, masks we put on and take off as situations require. Beneath all these shifting identities lies something more fundamental, a core awareness that remains constant even as everything else changes. This deeper identity isn't something we need to create or achieve. It's already present, waiting to be recognized like a star that's always shining, but sometimes hidden by clouds. When we identify too strongly with our temporary roles, the stressed employee, the worried parent, the disappointed friend, we forget this deeper truth about who we are. But in moments of quiet reflection, especially in the liminal space between waking and sleeping, this essential self becomes more apparent. Think of it this way. You are not the character in your dreams, even though the dream feels completely real while you're experiencing it. Similarly, you're not entirely defined by your daytime roles and responsibilities, even though they feel very important while you're engaged with them. There's a part of you that observes all these experiences, that witnesses both dreams and waking life with equal detachment and compassion. Marcus Aurelius spent considerable time contemplating what he called the view from above, an imaginative exercise where he would picture himself from increasingly distant perspectives. First from across the room, then from outside the building, then from high in the sky, then from the perspective of the stars themselves. This practice wasn't meant to make him feel small or insignificant, but rather to provide context and proportion for whatever challenges he was facing. From the cosmic perspective, most of our daily worries reveal themselves to be quite small. The argument with your neighbour, the disappointing performance review, the financial concern that's been keeping you awake, these situations remain real and worthy of attention, but they're also temporary blips in a much larger story. This broader view doesn't minimise genuine problems, but it does prevent them from consuming all our mental and emotional energy. As you rest tonight, you might experiment with this expanded perspective. Imagine yourself lying there from increasingly distant viewpoints. See yourself in your bed, in your room, in your building, in your neighbourhood, your city, your region, your country, your continent, your planet spinning quietly in space. From this vantage point, the day's concerns don't disappear, but they settle into a more manageable proportion. This cosmic perspective naturally leads to what Aurelius considered one of philosophy's greatest gifts: the cultivation of wonder. Despite ruling an empire and dealing with constant political pressures, he never lost his sense of amazement at the simple fact of existence. He marvelled at the way morning light gradually illuminates the world, at the intricate patterns of leaves on trees, at the mysterious process by which thoughts arise in consciousness. This capacity for wonder isn't childish or naive. It's a mature recognition that existence itself is fundamentally mysterious and miraculous. The fact that there's something rather than nothing, that consciousness emerges from matter, that love and beauty and meaning arise in what might otherwise be a cold, mechanical universe. These are genuine mysteries worthy of lifelong contemplation. Even now, as you lie in the darkness, you're participating in countless miracles. Your heart beats without your conscious direction. Your lungs draw breath automatically. Your brain processes these words and somehow transforms them into meaning. Blood flows through intricate networks of vessels, carrying nutrients to every cell in your body. Your immune system quietly battles potential threats while you rest. These processes have been refined over millions of years of evolution, yet they happen so smoothly that we rarely notice them. The Emperor found great comfort in contemplating these natural processes. They reminded him that he was part of something much larger and more intelligent than his individual will. Just as his body knew how to heal cuts and digest food without conscious oversight, perhaps there was a larger intelligence guiding the unfolding of events in ways he couldn't always understand or control. This trust in the natural order became a cornerstone of his philosophy, not a passive resignation, but an active collaboration with the forces that sustain life. Like a skilled sailor who works with wind and current rather than fighting them, Aurelius learned to align his efforts with the deeper patterns he observed in nature and human affairs. This alignment requires a particular kind of listening, a quality of attention that's both focused and relaxed. We must be engaged enough to respond appropriately to what life presents, yet relaxed enough to avoid forcing solutions through pure willpower. It's like learning to float in water, where too much effort causes sinking while the right balance of attention and ease allows effortless buoyancy. Perhaps this describes your current state, suspended between waking consciousness and sleep, attentive enough to follow these ideas yet relaxed enough to let them wash over you without strain. This quality of awareness, alert but not tense, receptive but not passive, represents a kind of ideal that Marcus Aurelius cultivated throughout his life. The philosopher-emperor also developed a sophisticated understanding of what we might call emotional intelligence. He recognized that feelings arise naturally in response to circumstances, but that we have considerable influence over how long they persist and how much power they wield over our actions. Like weather patterns, emotions have their own rhythms and seasons. Some feelings blow through quickly like summer storms, while others settle in for longer periods like winter fog. The key insight is that we need not be victims of our emotional weather. Just as we can prepare for rain by carrying an umbrella, we can prepare for emotional storms by cultivating inner resources like patience, perspective, and self-compassion. When difficult feelings arise, we can acknowledge them without being overwhelmed, experience them without being defined by them. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or suppressing natural responses. Rather, it means developing a spacious relationship with our feeling states, creating enough inner room that even intense emotions don't completely completely flood our awareness. It's like living in a house with very high ceilings, where even loud sounds don't feel oppressive because there's so much space to contain them. Tonight, if any lingering emotions from the day are still present, you might practice this spacious approach. Instead of pushing uncomfortable feelings away or getting lost in them, simply notice them with gentle curiosity. What does this emotion feel like in your body? Where do you sense it most strongly? What would it be like to give it plenty of room to exist without needing to do anything about it right now? This practice of emotional spaciousness connects to another of Aurelius's profound insights: the difference between pain and suffering. Pain, he understood, is often unavoidable. Bodies get injured, relationships end, loved ones die, plans don't work out. These experiences naturally cause pain, and trying to avoid this reality only creates more problems. But suffering, the story we tell ourselves about our pain, is largely optional. When something painful happens, we have a choice about how much additional suffering to add through our mental commentary. We can catastrophize, imagining that this pain will never end, or that it means something terrible about us or our future. We can resist reality, exhausting ourselves in futile attempts to make things different than they are. Or we can practice what Aurelius called the discipline of assent, carefully examining our thoughts about painful experiences and refusing to add unnecessary layers of suffering. This discipline becomes particularly relevant during times of illness, loss, or disappointment. The physical pain of a headache is one thing. The mental anguish of thinking, "This always happens to me. I can't handle this. What if it gets worse?" is something entirely different. The sadness of losing a job is natural and appropriate. The shame spiral of, "I'm a failure, I'll never succeed, everyone will judge me," is an optional addition that only increases suffering. As you prepare for sleep, this distinction between pain and suffering offers a practical gift. If there's some difficulty in your life right now, some source of genuine pain, you might practice separating the factual reality from the story you're telling yourself about it. What actually happened versus what you imagine it means? What do you know for certain versus what you're afraid might be true? This separation doesn't eliminate pain, but it often dramatically reduces unnecessary suffering. Marcus Aurelius understood that this practice of mental discipline wasn't about becoming cold or detached from life. Rather, it was about developing the emotional stability that allows for deeper engagement. When we're not constantly destabilized by our own reactions, we can respond to life's challenges with greater wisdom and effectiveness. We can love more fully because we're not afraid of loss. We can work more creatively because we're not paralyzed by fear of failure. We can rest more deeply because we're not carrying the weight of unnecessary mental burdens. This brings us to another dimension of the Emperor's wisdom, his understanding of time as a gift rather than a commodity. In our achievement-oriented culture, we often think of time as something to be optimized, maximized, and productively used. But Aurelius saw time more like a flowing river, something to be experienced rather than possessed, appreciated rather than controlled. Each moment contains its own completeness, its own perfection, regardless of what we accomplish within it. The moment spent watching clouds drift across the sky is no less valuable than the moment spent closing an important business deal. The time invested in comforting a crying child is no less significant than the time spent writing a great book. This perspective frees us from the exhausting pressure to make every moment count in some measurable way. Tonight represents one of these complete moments, a time set aside for rest and reflection, rather than accomplishment and productivity. There's nowhere you need to go, nothing you need to achieve, no problem you must solve before morning. This is time for simply being, for allowing consciousness to settle and soften, for participating in the ancient human ritual of preparing for sleep. The philosopher emperor would have appreciated this nightly pause, this temporary withdrawal from the demands of external life. He understood that periods of apparent inactivity are often when the deepest processing and integration occur. Like soil that lies fallow between growing seasons, consciousness needs these quiet intervals to restore its natural fertility. In these moments of stillness, insights arise that remained hidden during busy periods. Solutions to persistent problems often appear not through intense effort, but through the relaxed awareness that comes when we stop trying so hard. The gentle state between waking and sleeping creates ideal conditions for this kind of spontaneous wisdom to emerge. As these philosophical reflections begin to blend with the approaching drowsiness, you might notice how naturally Marcus Aurelius's insights complement the transition towards sleep. His emphasis on acceptance prepares us to surrender control. His focus on the present moment draws attention away from tomorrow's anxieties. His cosmic perspective helps daily concerns settle into proper proportion. His understanding of cycles reminds us that rest is not laziness but wisdom. The Emperor's philosophy doesn't demand that we transform ourselves overnight or achieve some impossible standard of enlightenment. Instead, it offers gentle guidance for the gradual cultivation of wisdom, compassion, and inner peace. Like water slowly shaping stone, these insights work through patient repetition rather than dramatic breakthrough. Perhaps that's why his words feel so appropriate for bedtime listening. They don't stimulate or agitate, but rather soothe and settle. They don't promise quick fixes or easy answers, but rather offer the deeper satisfaction of understanding. They invite us not to become someone different, but to recognise more clearly who we already are beneath all the surface complexity of daily life. Tonight, as consciousness gradually releases its hold on the day's activities and concerns, these ancient insights can serve as gentle companions, quiet voices of wisdom accompanying you toward the restorative depths of sleep. The Emperor's philosophy continues in the quiet spaces between thoughts, in the gradual settling of body and mind, in the natural rhythm that carries awareness from waking through dreaming, into the mysterious renewal that comes with rest. The gentle wisdom of Marcus Aurelius extends into perhaps his most profound teaching, the art of dying well, which paradoxically becomes the foundation for living fully. But before you think this sounds too somber for bedtime reflection, consider how the Emperor approached mortality. For him, contemplating death wasn't morbid but liberating, a daily practice that infused each moment with clarity and purpose. He understood that accepting our finite nature doesn't diminish life's beauty but enhances it. Like knowing that a sunset will fade makes its colours more precious. Every evening as you prepare for sleep, you're practicing a small version of this ultimate letting go. Sleep itself is a nightly rehearsal for the great mystery that awaits us all, a gentle reminder that consciousness can release its grip on control and trust in something larger. The Emperor found great comfort in this parallel, seeing each night's rest as an opportunity to practice the art of surrender, that wisdom traditions have long recognised as essential to human flourishing. This daily confrontation with our temporary nature led Aurelius to develop what we might call a philosophy of legacy, though not in the way we typically understand that word. He wasn't concerned with monuments or lasting fame, but rather with the ripple effects of small daily actions. Every word spoken with kindness, every moment of patience practiced with a difficult person, every choice made from integrity rather than convenience. These create waves that extend far beyond our ability to trace them. Tonight, as you review your day through this lens, you might notice how many opportunities for positive influence actually presented themselves. The smile you offered to a stranger, the extra moment of attention you gave to someone who needed it, the decision to respond with curiosity rather than defensiveness when challenged. These seemingly minor choices contribute to what Aurelius saw as the great work of human existence, the gradual increase of wisdom, compassion, and understanding in the world. This perspective transforms even mundane activities into opportunities for philosophical practice. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on impermanence and renewal. Waiting in traffic becomes a chance to practice patience and acceptance. Listening to a friend's troubles becomes an exercise in presence and compassion. The Emperor understood that enlightenment isn't found in extraordinary moments, but in bringing extraordinary awareness to ordinary experiences. This quality of sacred attention naturally leads to another dimension of his teaching, the cultivation of gratitude as a way of seeing, rather than merely a feeling to experience occasionally. For Marcus Aurelius, gratitude wasn't about forcing positivity onto difficult situations, but about recognizing the countless gifts that sustain existence moment by moment. The air that fills your lungs without effort, the water that flows from your tap, the shelter that protects you from the elements, the language that allows these ideas to travel from one mind to another across centuries. All of these represent miraculous collaborations that make life possible. Even this very moment contains countless reasons for appreciation. Your body maintains its complex operations without conscious oversight. Your mind processes these philosophical concepts and somehow transforms them into understanding. Your heart continues its steady rhythm that has accompanied every experience of your life. The bed that supports you was created by human hands. The roof above you represents generations of architectural wisdom. The peace you're experiencing right now exists because countless others have worked to create and maintain the conditions that make such tranquility possible. This recognition of interdependence was central to the Emperor's worldview. He saw himself not as an isolated individual struggling alone against cosmic indifference, but as part of an intricate web of relationships that included not only other people, but the entire natural world. The oxygen in your lungs was recently part of a plant's photosynthetic process. The carbon in your bones was forged in the heart of an ancient star. The water in your body has cycled through countless other living beings over millions of years. From this perspective, the boundary between self and world becomes more fluid, less rigidly defined. Your well-being and the well-being of everything around you are intimately connected, not as a philosophical concept, but as a biological and psychological reality. When you contribute to others' happiness, you create conditions that support your own flourishing. When you care for the environment, you're caring for the larger body of which you're a part. This understanding naturally flows into what Aurelius considered one of philosophy's most practical applications, the development of emotional resilience through proper perspective. The emperor faced enormous challenges during his reign, plagues that decimated the population, wars on multiple frontiers, political intrigue and betrayal, yet he maintained what we might call an unshakable core of inner peace. This wasn't because his life was easy, but because he had learned to see difficulties within a larger context. When faced with setbacks, he would remind himself that obstacles are temporary, while the capacity to respond with wisdom and grace is permanent. When dealing with difficult people, he would remember that their behaviour reflects their own level of understanding and pain rather than any objective truth about reality. When confronting loss, he would honour his grief while also recognising that attachment to impermanent things inevitably leads to suffering. This doesn't mean becoming indifferent or emotionally numb. Rather, it means developing what we might call emotional spaciousness, the ability to feel deeply while also maintaining perspective. Like a vast sky that contains storms without being disturbed by them, consciousness can hold intense experiences without being overwhelmed or defined by them. Perhaps right now you can sense this quality of spaciousness within your own awareness. Notice how you can observe your thoughts and feelings without being completely identified with them. There's a part of you that remains calm and witnessing even when emotions are intense, a stable presence that has been with you throughout your entire life, even as everything else has changed. The emperor called this stable presence the ruling faculty, the aspect of consciousness that makes choices and holds values and maintains continuity of identity over time. Unlike thoughts and feelings, which come and go like weather patterns, this deeper awareness remains constant. Learning to rest in this stable presence became, for Aurelius, the foundation of all philosophical practice. This inner stability isn't something we need to create through effort or achievement. It's already present, waiting to be recognised and trusted. Like learning to float in water, the key is relaxing into what's already there rather than struggling to manufacture something new. The more we try to force inner peace, the more elusive it becomes. But when we simply notice the awareness that's already present, peace reveals itself as our natural state. This recognition leads to another beautiful aspect of the emperor's wisdom, his understanding of virtue as its own reward. Unlike approaches that see good behaviour as earning future benefits, Aurelius understood that acting with integrity, compassion and wisdom creates immediate satisfaction regardless of external results. The person who chooses honesty experiences the peace that comes with alignment between inner values and outer expression. The individual who responds to anger with patience discovers the strength that comes from self-mastery. This means that even when virtuous actions aren't recognised or rewarded by others, they still contribute to our own flourishing. The parent who remains patient with a difficult child, the employee who maintains integrity despite workplace pressures, the friend who offers support without expecting reciprocation. All of these people experience the immediate rewards of living in accordance with their deepest values. Tonight, you might reflect on moments from your day when you acted from this kind of inner alignment. Perhaps you chose kindness when you could have chosen criticism, or patience when you could have chosen irritation, or honesty when you could have chosen convenient deception. These moments of virtue are their own gifts, creating inner harmony that no external validation can match. This understanding of virtue as intrinsically rewarding connects to the emperor's insights about the nature of true wealth. While he certainly understood the practical importance of material resources, Aurelius recognized that the most valuable possessions are internal qualities that can never be taken away. Wisdom, compassion, courage, and integrity represent a kind of wealth that increases when shared and remains intact regardless of external circumstances. A person rich in these inner resources can find contentment in simple circumstances, while someone lacking these qualities will feel impoverished regardless of material abundance. This isn't about rejecting legitimate needs for food, shelter, and security, but about recognizing that beyond meeting basic requirements, happiness comes more from who we are than from what we possess. This perspective can be particularly soothing during times of financial stress or material uncertainty. While practical concerns deserve attention and appropriate action, our fundamental well-being doesn't depend entirely on external circumstances. The capacity for joy, the ability to love and be loved, the satisfaction of contributing to others' welfare, these treasures remain available regardless of our economic situation. As sleep approaches more closely, these philosophical insights begin to weave together into a comprehensive approach to living that embraces both the practical and the transcendent. Marcus Aurelius offers us a way of being that's simultaneously down to earth and spiritually elevated, personally empowering and socially responsible, rationally grounded and deeply compassionate. His wisdom doesn't promise to eliminate life's difficulties, but rather to transform our relationship with them. Challenges become opportunities for growth, setbacks become lessons in resilience, losses become teachers of gratitude and impermanence. This isn't about forced optimism, but about cultivating the kind of deep acceptance that allows us to work skillfully with whatever life presents. The emperor understood that this transformation happens gradually, through patient daily practice rather than dramatic overnight change. Like a river slowly carving a canyon, consistent application of philosophical principles eventually reshapes the landscape of consciousness. Small daily choices to respond with wisdom rather than reactivity, to choose understanding over judgment, to practice presence over distraction, these seemingly minor decisions accumulate into profound transformation. Perhaps this describes your own journey with these ideas, a gradual awakening to possibilities that were always present but not always recognized. The capacity for peace, for joy, for meaningful contribution to the world, these potentials exist within everyone, waiting to be cultivated through gentle, persistent practice. Tonight represents another opportunity for this cultivation, a chance to let these ancient insights settle into the deeper layers of consciousness where real change occurs. Like seeds planted in fertile soil, philosophical understanding often does its most important work below the surface of awareness, growing quietly in the darkness until it's ready to flower in daily life. The emperor's final gift to us might be his modelling of how to hold life lightly while taking it seriously, how to care deeply while remaining unattached to outcomes, how to engage fully while maintaining inner freedom. This paradoxical wisdom, this ability to embrace life's contradictions with grace and humour, represents perhaps the highest achievement of human consciousness. As these reflections begin to blend with approaching sleep, you might notice how naturally philosophy and rest complement each other. Both involve a stepping back from immediate concerns. Both create space for deeper perspectives to emerge. Both honour the rhythms of engagement and withdrawal that characterise all healthy living. The gentle drowsiness that's perhaps beginning to settle over your awareness isn't separate from philosophical understanding, but rather another expression of it. The willingness to let go of control, to trust in processes larger than personal will, to surrender to the natural cycles that sustain all life. These represent some of the deepest insights that Marcus Aurelius spent his lifetime cultivating. In this peaceful space between waking and sleeping, between the day's activities and tomorrow's possibilities, ancient wisdom and present moment awareness converge. The emperor's insights become not just ideas to understand, but lived experiences to embody, not just concepts to remember, but ways of being to practice. The gentle philosophy of Marcus Aurelius continues its quiet work, even as conscious attention begins to fade, planting seeds of wisdom that will flower in tomorrow's choices, whispering truths that will guide future decisions, offering companionship for the ongoing journey of becoming more fully human. Tonight, as consciousness gradually loosens its grip on the day's concerns, we encounter perhaps Marcus Aurelius's most intimate teaching, the art of self-forgiveness, and the gentle recognition that perfection is neither expected nor required. The philosopher-emperor understood something profound about human nature that many of us struggle to accept. We're all works in progress, eternal students in the school of existence, forever learning and occasionally failing in our attempts to live wisely. This understanding flows from his recognition that judgment, particularly harsh self-judgment, creates a kind of internal warfare that exhausts the soul and prevents genuine growth. When we berate ourselves for mistakes, when we replay our failures with cruel commentary, when we demand impossible standards of ourselves, we create suffering that serves no useful purpose. The emperor learned to observe his own shortcomings with the same compassionate curiosity he might show toward a child learning to walk, understanding that stumbles are part of the process, not evidence of fundamental inadequacy. Think about how this might transform your own inner dialogue. Instead of the harsh critic that often dominates our mental landscape, imagine cultivating an internal voice that speaks with the gentle wisdom of a loving teacher. When you notice yourself falling short of your own ideals, what if you responded not with condemnation, but with understanding? What if mistakes became opportunities for learning rather than evidence of failure? This shift in self-relationship creates what Aurelius called philosophical friendship with oneself, a kind of internal companionship that remains constant through all of life's ups and downs. Just as a good friend offers both honest feedback and unconditional support, we can learn to be both truthful and kind with ourselves, acknowledging areas for growth without destroying our fundamental sense of worth. The emperor's approach to self-improvement was remarkably gentle and sustainable. Rather than attempting dramatic transformations through willpower alone, he focused on small daily practices that gradually reshaped consciousness. Like water wearing smooth a rough stone, consistent application of philosophical principles eventually creates profound change, but without the violence and reaction that often accompany more forceful approaches to personal development. Perhaps this evening represents one such moment of gentle practice, a quiet opportunity to apply ancient wisdom to contemporary life. As you lie there, you might notice areas where you've been particularly hard on yourself lately. What would it feel like to extend the same compassion to yourself that you would naturally offer to a good friend facing similar challenges? This practice of self-compassion naturally extends into what Marcus Aurelius understood as the foundation of all healthy relationships, the ability to see others clearly without the distorting lens of our own expectations and projections. When we're at peace with our own imperfections, we become more tolerant of others' limitations. When we've learned to forgive ourselves, forgiveness of others flows more naturally. When we've stopped demanding that we be different than we are, we can accept others as they are rather than as we wish they would be. The emperor wrote extensively about the challenge of dealing with difficult people, not from a place of superiority, but from genuine understanding of how challenging it can be to maintain equanimity when others behave in ways that trigger our own reactivity. His solution wasn't to avoid such people or to change them, but to change his own response, to find the internal stability that remains unshaken regardless of others' behaviour. This doesn't mean becoming passive or failing to set appropriate boundaries. Rather, it means responding to challenging situations from a place of centered calm rather than emotional reactivity. The difference is profound. Reactions are automatic and often escalate conflicts, while responses emerge from conscious choice and tend to de-escalate tensions. Tonight, if there's someone in your life who's been particularly challenging lately, you might experiment with seeing them through the emperor's compassionate eyes. What pain or fear might be driving their difficult behaviour? What would it be like to respond to them not from your own hurt or anger, but from a place of genuine understanding and strength? This quality of emotional maturity connects to another of Aurelius's profound insights, the recognition that most human conflicts arise not from genuine incompatibility, but from misunderstanding and misperception. People rarely set out to cause harm. They act from their own limited perspective, trying to meet their needs and protect themselves in ways that sometimes impact others negatively. When we understand this, conflicts become opportunities for greater understanding rather than battles to be won. The philosopher-emperor developed what we might call strategic empathy, the ability to understand others' perspectives, not necessarily to agree with them, but to respond more skillfully to whatever situations arise. This kind of empathy isn't emotional enmeshment or losing oneself in others' feelings, but rather a clear-sighted recognition of the forces that drive human behaviour. From this understanding flows a natural quality of patience, not as something we force ourselves to practice, but as the organic result of seeing clearly. When we understand that the person who cut us off in traffic might be rushing to the hospital, when we recognise that the colleague who seems selfish might be acting from deep insecurity, when we realise that the family member who disappoints us might be doing the best they can with their current resources, patience emerges naturally. This expanded perspective creates what Aurelius called the long view, a way of seeing current difficulties within the context of larger patterns and longer timescales. The argument that feels so important today will likely be forgotten within a week. The career setback that seems devastating now may lead to opportunities that couldn't have emerged otherwise. The relationship that ends painfully might clear space for connections that better serve everyone involved. The long view doesn't minimise present pain or suggest that current challenges don't matter. Rather, it provides the kind of perspective that prevents us from being completely overwhelmed by temporary difficulties. Like standing on a mountain peak and seeing how individual valleys and ridges fit into the larger landscape, this broader perspective helps us navigate current terrain with greater skill and less panic. As you settle more deeply into rest, you might practice this expanded temporal perspective on whatever challenges you're currently facing. How might today's concerns look from the vantage point of next month, or next year, or the final moments of your life? This isn't about dismissing legitimate problems, but about placing them within a context that allows for more skillful response. The Emperor's wisdom also extends into the realm of what we might call philosophical economics, an understanding of how to invest our limited resources of time, energy, and attention for maximum benefit. Just as a wise investor diversifies their portfolio, Aurelius understood the importance of distributing our inner resources in ways that create sustainable well-being rather than quick fixes or temporary satisfactions. This means paying careful attention to what we feed our minds, just as we pay attention to what we feed our bodies. The books we read, the conversations we engage in, the entertainment we consume, the thoughts we habitually think, all of these shape consciousness in ways that accumulate over time. The Emperor was remarkably disciplined about surrounding himself with influences that supported wisdom and virtue, rather than those that encouraged vice or ignorance. Tonight you might reflect on the various influences that currently shape your mental and emotional environment, which relationships, activities, and forms of entertainment support your highest aspirations, and which ones drain your energy or encourage qualities you'd rather not cultivate. This isn't about becoming judgmental or rigid, but about making conscious choices that align with your deepest values. This conscious curation of influences naturally leads to another dimension of Marcus Aurelius's practice, the cultivation of what he called philosophical appetite, a genuine hunger for wisdom and understanding that gradually replaces less nourishing cravings. Just as physical appetites can be trained to prefer healthy foods over junk food, our psychological appetites can be gradually shaped to prefer meaningful activities over empty distractions. The development of philosophical appetite isn't about forcing ourselves to enjoy things that feel boring or irrelevant. Rather, it's about discovering the genuine satisfaction that comes from activities that nourish the deeper aspects of our nature. The pleasure of understanding a complex idea, the joy of helping someone else grow, the peace that comes from acting with integrity. These satisfactions may be quieter than more immediate gratifications, but they tend to be more lasting and fulfilling. This process of gradually refining our appetites creates what Aurelius saw as true freedom, the liberation that comes from wanting what is actually good for us, rather than being driven by cravings that ultimately create suffering. The person who has developed a genuine taste for wisdom is naturally drawn toward activities and relationships that support their growth. The individual who has learned to appreciate simplicity finds contentment more easily than someone always seeking the next acquisition. Perhaps this evening represents a moment of practicing this refined appetite, choosing the nourishment of philosophical reflection over the empty calories of worry or mindless entertainment. There's a particular satisfaction in ending the day with thoughts that elevate rather than diminish, ideas that inspire rather than agitate, perspectives that create peace rather than anxiety. The emperor understood that this cultivation of refined desires naturally leads to what philosophers have long recognized as the highest human achievement: the ability to be genuinely happy for others' success and genuinely compassionate toward others' suffering without the distortion of comparison or competition. When we're not constantly measuring our worth against others' accomplishments, we can celebrate their victories without feeling diminished. When we're not protecting a fragile ego, we can offer authentic support during others' difficulties. This quality of emotional generosity represents perhaps the most beautiful flowering of philosophical practice. The person who has learned to find satisfaction in their own growth stops needing others to fail in order to feel successful. The individual who's discovered their own worth stops needing others' approval to feel valuable. The consciousness that has touched its own depth stops fearing others' depth. From this inner abundance flows what we might call effortless virtue, goodness that emerges naturally from well-being rather than being forced through moral effort. The happy person tends to be kind, not because they should be, but because kindness feels good. The peaceful individual tends to be patient, not because patience is virtuous, but because agitation is uncomfortable when you've tasted real calm. This doesn't mean that conscious effort becomes unnecessary, but rather that effort becomes more skillful and sustainable when it flows from genuine understanding rather than external pressure. Like a river that naturally flows toward the ocean, consciousness that has tasted wisdom naturally moves toward greater wisdom. Kindness that has experienced its own rewards naturally expresses itself more freely. Tonight, as these philosophical currents carry you towards sleep, you might notice how naturally wisdom and rest support each other. Both involve stepping back from immediate pressures. Both create space for deeper truths to emerge. Both honour the rhythms of effort and ease that characterise all healthy living. The same consciousness that can contemplate the Emperor's insights is the consciousness that knows how to surrender to sleep's restorative embrace. The gentle drowsiness that may now be settling over your awareness isn't separate from philosophical understanding, but rather another expression of it. The willingness to let go of the day's concerns, to trust in processes larger than personal control, to allow consciousness to cycle through its natural states of activity and rest. These represent some of the deepest wisdom that human beings can embody. In this peaceful transition between waking thought and sleeping restoration, Marcus Aurelius's philosophy reveals its most intimate gift: the recognition that we are already whole, already worthy, already connected to the larger intelligence that moves through all existence. The Emperor's teachings don't promise to make us into something we're not, but rather to help us recognize more clearly what we have always been beneath the surface complications of daily life. The insights we've explored tonight, the practices we've contemplated, the perspectives we've entertained, all of these represent different facets of a single truth. That consciousness itself, the very awareness through which you're receiving these words, is the most precious gift in existence. This awareness doesn't belong to you like a possession. Rather, you arise within it like a wave arising within the ocean, temporary but never separate, individual but never isolated. As sleep approaches, this recognition can serve as the gentlest of lullabies, a reminder that the consciousness preparing for rest is the same consciousness that has contemplated these ancient truths, the same awareness that connects you to every other sentient being, the same intelligence that has been exploring itself through countless forms across billions of years. The Emperor's philosophy continues its quiet work even as deliberate thought begins to fade, weaving itself into the deeper layers of understanding that shape tomorrow's choices, whispering ancient truths that will guide future moments, offering the companionship of wisdom for the ongoing journey of conscious living. In this sacred space where philosophy and sleep converge, where ancient insights meet present moment awareness, where the Emperor's gentle guidance accompanies you toward rest, the deepest teachings of Marcus Aurelius reveal themselves not as concepts to be grasped, but as realities to be lived, not as ideas to remember, but as ways of being to embody, not as distant wisdom, but as intimate truth. The restful philosophy of Marcus Aurelius settles into the quiet corners of consciousness, ready to emerge when needed, content to remain hidden when not required, always available as a source of guidance, comfort and perspective for the beautiful complexity of human existence. And in this gentle settling, this peaceful integration of wisdom and rest, the Emperor's greatest teaching reveals itself: that true philosophy is not thinking about life, but learning to live with grace, awareness, and profound appreciation for the mystery of being conscious at all. The gentle currents of Marcus Aurelius's wisdom flow naturally into perhaps his most practical teaching. The understanding that happiness is not a destination to be reached, but a way of travelling through life. The emperor discovered that joy emerges not from achieving specific outcomes, but from the quality of attention we bring to whatever we're experiencing. This insight can transform even the most ordinary moments into sources of quiet satisfaction. Consider how this applies to your current state of rest. You're not lying there waiting for sleep to arrive so that happiness can begin tomorrow. Rather, this very moment of peaceful listening, this gentle transition between day and night, this quiet communion with ancient wisdom, these already contain their own completeness. The emperor learned to find contentment in process rather than only in results, in becoming rather than only in achieving. This perspective naturally leads to what Aurelius called the practice of philosophical presence, a way of inhabiting each moment fully rather than always reaching toward the next experience. When we're constantly focused on what comes next, the meeting tomorrow, the weekend plans, the future goals, we miss the subtle richness of what's happening right now. The warmth of your blankets, the rhythm of your breathing, the quiet safety of your resting place. These simple realities often go unnoticed when attention is always elsewhere. The emperor understood that presence isn't something we achieve through effort, but something we allow by releasing unnecessary mental activity. Like clearing debris from a stream to let the water flow naturally, presence emerges when we stop cluttering awareness with excessive planning, reviewing, and worrying. This doesn't mean becoming passive or irresponsible, but rather learning to distinguish between useful mental activity and mere mental noise. Perhaps right now you can experiment with this quality of presence. Instead of thinking about these ideas, simply receive them. Instead of analysing your experience of listening, simply listen. Instead of monitoring whether you're getting sleepy enough, simply rest in whatever state of awareness is naturally present. This kind of relaxed attention often allows both understanding and sleep to arise more effortlessly. This practice of presence connects to another dimension of the emperor's wisdom, his understanding of what we might call the democracy of moments. In our achievement-oriented culture, we often treat some experiences as more important than others. The big meeting matters more than the quiet walk. The major decision carries more weight than the simple conversation. The dramatic events overshadow the ordinary ones. But Aurelius recognized that consciousness experiences each moment with equal vividness, equal reality, equal potential for meaning. The moment you spent listening to a friend today was just as real as any major accomplishment. The instant of noticing a beautiful cloud was just as present as any significant achievement. The breath you're taking right now is just as much a part of your life as any milestone you've reached. This recognition can be profoundly liberating, freeing us from the exhausting hierarchy that makes most of life feel preliminary to the really important parts that supposedly lie ahead. From this understanding flows what the emperor called the practice of philosophical gratitude, though this goes far deeper than simply feeling thankful for good things that happen. This is more like a fundamental orientation toward existence itself, an appreciation for the sheer improbability and wonder of being conscious at all. The fact that matter organized itself into awareness, that the universe developed the capacity to contemplate itself, that consciousness emerged from cosmic dust and now lies here, considering ancient wisdom. These represent miracles so profound that most of the time we simply can't take them in. Even the capacity to feel bored or restless or worried represents an extraordinary achievement of evolutionary complexity. The ability to imagine different possibilities, to remember past experiences, to anticipate future events, these mental capacities that we take for granted required billions of years of development. The emperor found endless fascination in contemplating these everyday miracles that surround us constantly. Tonight, as your body automatically manages countless biological processes without any conscious oversight, you're witnessing this miraculous self-organization in action. Your immune system quietly protects you from threats. Your nervous system processes sensory information and transforms it into coherent experience. Your cardiovascular system delivers nutrients to every cell. These processes represent intelligence far beyond individual understanding, yet they operate seamlessly to sustain the awareness through which you're receiving these words. This recognition of our participation in larger intelligences naturally leads to what Marcus Aurelius considered one of philosophy's most profound insights: the understanding that individual consciousness and universal consciousness are not separate phenomena, but different scales of the same underlying reality. Just as waves are not separate from the ocean, but rather expressions of oceanic movement, individual awareness arises within and as universal awareness rather than being isolated from it. This perspective can be deeply comforting during moments of loneliness or isolation. You're never truly alone because you're always embedded within the larger consciousness that expresses itself as all existence. Your thoughts and feelings are movements within this universal awareness. Your experiences are the universe experiencing itself from your particular perspective. This doesn't diminish your individuality, but rather places it within a context that reveals its cosmic significance. The emperor found great peace in contemplating this interconnectedness during difficult periods of his reign. When facing seemingly insurmountable challenges, he could remember that he was not struggling alone against indifferent forces, but rather participating in the larger intelligence that unfolds through all apparent conflicts and resolutions. This perspective didn't eliminate difficulties, but transformed his relationship with them, allowing him to respond from wisdom rather than mere personal reactivity. Perhaps this cosmic perspective can inform your own relationship with whatever challenges you're currently navigating. Instead of seeing problems as obstacles to your happiness, what if they represent opportunities for the universal intelligence to develop new capacities through your particular form of consciousness? What if difficulties are not interruptions to your spiritual development, but rather integral parts of it? This doesn't mean that problems aren't real or that suffering doesn't matter. Rather, it means that even our struggles serve larger purposes that may not be immediately apparent. The patience you develop while dealing with difficult people contributes to the world's overall capacity for patience. The compassion you cultivate during your own pain increases the universe's total compassion. The wisdom you gain through experience becomes available to the larger field of consciousness that connects all beings. From this understanding emerges what Aurelius called the practice of cosmic service, a way of contributing to the well-being of the whole through conscious participation in whatever life presents. This doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. Often it simply means bringing full attention and genuine care to ordinary activities. The parent who listens patiently to a child's concerns, the cashier who maintains kindness despite being tired, the friend who offers presence rather than advice during difficult times, all of these represent forms of cosmic service. The emperor understood that this kind of service naturally flows from inner fullness rather than outer obligation. When we're connected to the source of well-being within ourselves, helping others feels effortless and joyful rather than burdensome. When we're aligned with our deepest nature, contributing to the common good becomes as natural as breathing. This alignment with our essential nature brings us to perhaps Marcus Aurelius's most intimate teaching: the recognition that beneath all the changing circumstances of life lies an unchanging core of peace, wisdom, and love. This isn't something we need to create or achieve, but rather something we need to remember and return to. Like a clear mountain lake that remains pristine beneath surface ripples, this essential nature remains constant even when emotions, thoughts, and circumstances fluctuate. The emperor spent considerable time learning to distinguish between this unchanging essence and the temporary phenomena that arise within it. Thoughts come and go, feelings arise and pass away, circumstances shift and change, but the awareness within which all of these movements occur remains stable and clear. Learning to rest in this stable awareness became the foundation of his philosophical practice. Perhaps right now you can sense this quality of unchanging awareness within your own experience. Notice that while thoughts about the day may still be arising, there's something that observes these thoughts without being disturbed by them. While your body may be settling into different positions, there's something that remains aware of these physical changes without being altered by them. This observing presence has been with you throughout your entire life, witnessing all your experiences while remaining essentially unchanged. This recognition of the unchanging witness naturally leads to what the emperor called the practice of philosophical rest, a quality of inner stillness that doesn't depend on external circumstances being any particular way. This isn't the rest that comes from the absence of activity, but rather the rest that remains present even during activity, like the eye of a hurricane that stays calm while winds swirl around it. Cultivating this inner stillness doesn't require forcing the mind to be quiet or suppressing natural mental activity. Rather, it emerges from recognizing the spacious awareness within which all mental activity arises. Instead of being caught up in the content of thoughts, we learn to rest in the space that contains them. Instead of being overwhelmed by the intensity of emotions, we discover the vast sky of consciousness within which all feelings appear and dissolve. Tonight, as sleep naturally approaches, you are already practicing this kind of philosophical rest. The gentle drowsiness that may be settling over your awareness isn't something separate from the consciousness that has been contemplating these ideas. Rather, it's another movement within the same vast space of awareness, another expression of the intelligence that knows how to think and also knows how to let thinking go. The Emperor's final gift to us might be his demonstration that wisdom and simplicity naturally support each other. The deepest insights often have the quality of obvious truths that we somehow overlooked, profound recognitions that feel both revolutionary and utterly familiar. The understanding that happiness comes from inner alignment rather than external circumstances, that peace is our natural state rather than something we need to manufacture, that love is what we are rather than something we need to find. These realizations have the quality of remembering rather than learning something new. This simplicity doesn't make philosophical practice easy, but it does make it accessible. We don't need special qualifications or extraordinary circumstances to begin cultivating wisdom. The opportunity for growth exists in every moment, every interaction, every choice between reactivity and response. The Emperor found his greatest teachers not in books or formal instruction, but in daily life itself, in the challenges and opportunities that arose naturally through simply being human. As these ancient insights continue to settle into the quiet spaces of consciousness, they begin to reveal their true nature, not as information to be stored, but as invitations to be lived, not as concepts to be understood, but as realities to be embodied. The Emperor's philosophy works its deepest transformation not through intellectual analysis, but through gradual integration into the fabric of daily existence. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius becomes most powerful when it disappears into natural, spontaneous responses to life situations. When patience arises effortlessly in traffic, when compassion flows naturally toward difficult people, when acceptance emerges organically during challenging circumstances, then philosophical understanding has ripened into lived wisdom. Tonight, as consciousness begins its nightly journey toward the restorative depths of sleep, these seeds of ancient wisdom settle into the fertile darkness where real transformation occurs. Like bulbs planted in autumn soil, philosophical insights often do their most important work below the surface of awareness, growing slowly and steadily until they're ready to bloom in the warm light of daily application. The gentle philosophy of Marcus Aurelius continues its quiet influence, even as deliberate thought begins to fade, weaving itself into the deeper patterns that shape tomorrow's choices, whispering timeless truths that will guide future decisions, offering the steady companionship of wisdom for the ongoing adventure of conscious living. And in this peaceful convergence of ancient insight and present rest, the Emperor's greatest teaching reveals itself, that true philosophy is not separate from life, but rather life lived with full awareness, deep appreciation, and boundless compassion for the magnificent mystery of existence itself. As we drift deeper into the Emperor's gentle teachings, we encounter perhaps his most transformative insight about the nature of change itself. Marcus Aurelius understood that resistance to change creates suffering, while acceptance of change creates flow. But his wisdom goes beyond simple acceptance. He discovered that change is not something that happens to us, but rather something we are constantly participating in, like dancers moving with music rather than fighting against the rhythm. Every cell in your body is different from the cells that composed you 7 years ago. Every thought you think reshapes the neural pathways in your brain. Every breath you take exchanges your inner atmosphere with the world around you. You're not a static thing experiencing change. You are change itself, temporarily organized into the beautiful pattern of consciousness that contemplates these very words. This recognition can be deeply liberating when we stop trying to freeze ourselves in familiar forms and instead learn to dance with the constant becoming that we actually are. The Emperor practiced what we might call the art of conscious transition, treating each shift in circumstances as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat to stability. When the seasons changed, he he noticed how nature demonstrates the beauty of letting go without clinging to what was. When his roles shifted from philosopher to general to administrator, he brought the same quality of presence to each function, without defining himself entirely by any single identity. Perhaps this evening represents one such transition for you, a gentle passage from the active engagement of daytime to the receptive restoration of nighttime. Instead of hurrying through this liminal space or treating it as merely preliminary to sleep, you might appreciate it as its own complete experience. The gradual softening of mental activity, the slow settling of physical tension, the quiet appreciation for wisdom that speaks across centuries, these moments have their own intrinsic value beyond their function as preparation for rest. This appreciation for transitional spaces leads us to another dimension of Aurelius's philosophy, his understanding of what we might call the sacred ordinary. The emperor ruled an empire yet found the divine not in grand ceremonies or monumental achievements, but in simple daily phenomena. The way morning light gradually illuminates a room, the sound of rain on leaves, the feeling of breath moving naturally through the body. These unremarkable experiences contain the same mystery and beauty as any religious revelation. Tonight, you might notice how many small miracles surround your resting place. The way fabric holds warmth, the way darkness creates conditions for rest, the way silence allows subtle sounds to emerge. Your pillow supports the weight of thoughts that have contemplated empires and atoms with equal wonder. Your blanket provides the same comfort that humans have sought since the beginning of consciousness. These simple elements of rest connect you to countless generations who have found peace in similar circumstances. The emperor's recognition of the sacred ordinary naturally flows into what he called the discipline of wonder, a conscious practice of approaching familiar experiences with fresh appreciation. When we see the same people, walk the same routes, perform the same tasks day after day, it's natural for awareness to become dulled by routine. But Aurelius understood that repetition doesn't diminish reality, only our attention to it. The sunrise is no less magnificent on Tuesday than on Saturday. Your loved ones are no less precious during ordinary conversations than during special celebrations. This practice of renewed attention can transform even the most mundane activities into opportunities for philosophical contemplation. Washing dishes becomes a meditation on the cycle of use and renewal. Preparing food becomes an appreciation for the complex web of relationships that brings nourishment to your table. Walking from one room to another becomes an opportunity to notice how consciousness effortlessly coordinates countless physical processes to create smooth movement. Perhaps this quality of renewed attention can inform your approach to sleep itself. Instead of treating rest as merely the absence of activity, what if you approached it as a positive practice of conscious surrender? What if the gradual letting go of daytime concerns became an act of trust in the larger intelligence that sustains life? What if the transition from waking thought to sleeping restoration became a nightly rehearsal for the ultimate letting go that awaits us all? This perspective on sleep as spiritual practice connects to the emperor's understanding of what he called the democracy of consciousness, the recognition that all states of awareness possess equal dignity and potential for insight. Dreams can teach us things that waking analysis cannot reach. The hypnagogic state between waking and sleeping often produces creative solutions that eluded deliberate problem solving. Even deep dreamless sleep serves essential functions of physical restoration and memory consolidation that conscious effort cannot replicate. From this appreciation for different states of consciousness emerges a natural curiosity about the mind's various capacities. The same awareness that can focus intensely on complex problems can also relax into receptive appreciation of beauty. The consciousness that can analyze philosophical concepts can also simply rest in wordless appreciation of existence itself. These different modes of awareness are like instruments in an orchestra, each contributing its unique voice to the symphony of human experience. The emperor developed what we might call cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift between different modes of mental activity as circumstances required. When decisive action was needed, he could focus his attention like a laser beam on relevant factors. When wisdom was called for, he could step back and consider broader perspectives. When rest was appropriate, he could release the need to understand or control and simply be present to whatever arose naturally. Tonight, you're practicing this same cognitive flexibility, allowing your mind to move from active engagement with ideas toward the more receptive state that welcomes sleep. There's no need to force this transition or judge yourself if thoughts continue to arise. Like a river that naturally slows as it approaches a lake, mental activity often gradually settles as the body prepares for rest. Trust in this natural process represents a form of philosophical practice, an expression of the same wisdom that allows flowers to close at sunset without any conscious effort. This trust in natural processes leads us to another beautiful aspect of the Emperor's teaching, his understanding of what we might call organic timing. Just as seeds know when to sprout and birds know when to migrate, human consciousness has its own rhythms and seasons that cannot be forced through willpower alone. Some insights require years of gradual preparation before they can be fully received. Some changes need time to ripen before they can occur sustainably. Some healings unfold slowly, in their own mysterious schedule that respects the complexity of what needs to be transformed. The Emperor learned to distinguish between appropriate effort and counterproductive forcing, between skillful action and anxious striving. Like a gardener who provides good conditions and then allows growth to occur naturally, he learned to create circumstances that supported wisdom and virtue while allowing their actual development to unfold according to its own intelligence. This doesn't mean becoming passive, but rather learning to work with natural forces rather than against them. Perhaps this understanding can inform your relationship with whatever goals or aspirations you're currently nurturing. Instead of demanding immediate results or forcing progress through sheer determination, what would it be like to provide good conditions and then trust in the organic timing that governs all sustainable growth? What would it mean to plant seeds of intention and then allow them to germinate in their own season? This organic approach to development naturally leads to what Aurelius called the practice of philosophical patience. Though this goes far beyond simply waiting for desired outcomes. This is more like a deep acceptance of the rhythms that govern all manifestation, a recognition that everything has its proper season, and trying to rush natural processes often delays them rather than accelerating them. The Emperor faced enormous pressures during his reign, military threats that demanded immediate response, political crises that seemed to require instant solutions, yet he maintained a quality of unhurried presence that allowed him to respond wisely rather than merely quickly. This wasn't indifference or procrastination, but rather the kind of centered calm that can assess situations accurately and act decisively when action is truly called for. Tonight, if your mind is still processing the day's events or anticipating tomorrow's challenges, you might practice this philosophical patience with your own mental activity. Instead of demanding that thoughts immediately settle or forcing yourself to feel sleepy, simply provide good conditions for rest and trust that sleep will arise naturally when the body and mind are ready. This trust in natural timing often allows rest to come more easily than anxious efforts to control the process. The Emperor's understanding of natural timing connects to his broader philosophy of what we might call collaborative living, an approach that recognizes our deep interdependence with all the forces that sustain existence. We don't create our heartbeat through conscious effort. We don't manufacture the oxygen we breathe. We don't generate the gravitational field that keeps us grounded to the planet. Most of what sustains life happens through intelligences far beyond individual control, yet we can learn to cooperate more skillfully with these larger systems. This collaboration extends into every aspect of human experience. The thoughts that arise in consciousness emerge from sources deeper than personal will. The insights that illuminate problems come from creative intelligence that cannot be commanded. The love that flows between people springs from wells that no individual owns or controls. Learning to work with these larger forces rather than trying to dominate them represents a fundamental shift from ego-driven effort toward wisdom-guided cooperation. From this understanding flows what the Emperor called the art of appropriate action, a way of responding to life that honors both individual agency and cosmic intelligence. We take responsibility for our choices while recognizing that the outcomes of those choices depend on countless factors beyond personal control. We act with full commitment while holding results lightly. We engage completely with whatever life presents while remaining inwardly free from attachment to specific outcomes. This balanced approach to action and non-attachment can transform our entire relationship with responsibility and success. Instead of measuring our worth by external achievements, we can find satisfaction in knowing we've responded to life's invitations with integrity and skill. Instead of being devastated by setbacks, we can see them as feedback that helps refine our understanding and approach. Instead of clinging desperately to temporary victories, we can appreciate them while remaining open to whatever emerges next. Perhaps this perspective can inform your approach to the various roles and responsibilities you carry. Whether you're a parent, a professional, a friend, a student, or any combination of identities, what would it be like to fulfill these functions with complete dedication while also maintaining the inner freedom that comes from non-attachment to results? What would it mean to offer your best efforts as a gift, rather than as a strategy for securing particular outcomes? This quality of engaged detachment naturally leads to what Marcus Aurelius considered one of the highest human achievements: the ability to serve others without depleting yourself. When action flows from inner fullness rather than outer neediness, when service emerges from joy rather than obligation, when giving happens from abundance rather than scarcity, then helping others actually increases our own well-being rather than diminishing it. The emperor discovered that this kind of sustainable service requires regular periods of withdrawal and renewal. Just as fields need to lie fallow between growing seasons to restore their fertility, consciousness needs quiet intervals to reconnect with the source of its own vitality. These periods of apparent inactivity are not laziness but wisdom, not selfishness, but preparation for more effective contribution. Tonight represents one such period of renewal, a time when you step back from external demands and simply rest in your own being. This isn't escape from responsibility, but rather the kind of restoration that makes genuine responsibility possible. When you're rested, centered, and connected to your own depth, you naturally have more to offer others. When you're depleted, anxious, and scattered, even well-intentioned efforts to help often create more problems than they solve. The emperor's wisdom about sustainable service connects to his understanding of what we might call the economics of attention, the recognition that consciousness itself is our most precious resource, and therefore deserves to be invested wisely. Just as we carefully consider how to spend money, we can learn to be more discriminating about how we spend our mental and emotional energy. This doesn't mean becoming selfish or withdrawing from legitimate commitments. Rather, it means recognizing that scattered attention serves no one well, while focused presence can transform even simple interactions into moments of genuine connection and mutual benefit. The conversation where you're fully present is more valuable than 10 conversations where you're mentally elsewhere. The task performed with complete attention often accomplishes more than hours of distracted effort. As these philosophical currents continue to carry you towards sleep, you might notice how this quality of focus and attention naturally supports the transition toward rest. Instead of trying to think about multiple things simultaneously, you can allow awareness to settle into this single stream of ancient wisdom flowing through present moment experience. Instead of dividing attention between listening and planning and worrying, you can simply receive these words with the same wholehearted presence that the emperor brought to his daily contemplations. This gathering of scattered attention into unified presence often creates the conditions for what Aurelius called philosophical insight, moments of sudden clarity that illuminate previously confusing situations. These insights rarely arise through forced analysis, but rather emerge naturally when consciousness is relaxed yet alert, engaged yet unattached. The state between waking and sleeping often provides ideal conditions for such revelations, as the analytical mind softens its grip while awareness remains receptive to subtle understanding. The emperor's approach to insight was characterized by patient receptivity rather than aggressive seeking. He created conditions that supported wisdom, regular periods of reflection, honest examination of his own motivations, genuine curiosity about life's deeper patterns, then allowed understanding to arise in its own timing. This approach often yielded more reliable and lasting insights than forced attempts to solve problems through willpower alone. Perhaps tonight will bring its own quiet revelations, not necessarily dramatic breakthroughs, but gentle clarifications that help tomorrow's choices emerge more easily. The solution to that persistent problem, the next step in that ongoing project, the right response to that challenging relationship. These answers often arise not through intense mental effort, but through the kind of relaxed awareness that naturally develops as consciousness prepares for rest. The emperor's final teaching might be his modelling of how to hold life's complexity with simplicity, how to engage fully with demanding circumstances while maintaining inner clarity and peace. His philosophy doesn't promise to eliminate life's challenges, but rather to transform our relationship with them, revealing difficulties as teachers and setbacks as opportunities for deeper understanding. This transformation happens gradually, through patient daily practice rather than sudden conversion. Like water slowly reshaping stone, consistent application of philosophical principles eventually creates profound shifts in how we experience and respond to life. Small daily choices to practice patience instead of reactivity, understanding instead of judgment, presence instead of distraction. These seemingly minor decisions accumulate into fundamental transformation of character and consciousness. Tonight represents another opportunity for this gentle cultivation, another chance to plant seeds of wisdom that will flower in tomorrow's choices. The insights you've contemplated, the perspectives you've entertained, the quality of attention you've practiced, all of these contribute to the gradual development of philosophical understanding that serves both individual flourishing and collective well-being. As sleep approaches more closely, these ancient teachings begin to settle into the deeper layers of consciousness where real integration occurs. Like nourishment being absorbed into the bloodstream, wisdom works its most profound transformation below the surface of awareness, gradually reshaping the patterns that govern daily experience. The gentle philosophy of Marcus Aurelius continues its quiet work, even as deliberate thought begins to fade, weaving itself into the fabric of dreams and rest, preparing to emerge tomorrow as spontaneous wisdom, natural compassion, and effortless grace. In this sacred space where ancient insight meets present peace, where philosophical contemplation dissolves into restorative sleep, the Emperor's teachings reveal their ultimate purpose: not to complicate life with additional concepts, but to simplify existence through deeper understanding, returning us to the natural wisdom that has always been our birthright. In these quiet hours before sleep claims us completely, we arrive at perhaps Marcus Aurelius's most tender recognition, that wisdom is not a burden to carry but a gentle companion to walk beside. The Emperor understood that true philosophy doesn't weigh us down with complicated theories or impossible standards. Instead, it lightens our steps by helping us see clearly what matters and what doesn't, what we can influence and what we must accept, what deserves our energy and what we can safely release. This lightness of being emerges naturally when we stop trying so hard to be perfect and instead focus on being present. The Emperor wrote about the relief that comes from abandoning the exhausting project of controlling outcomes and instead pouring our attention into the quality of our responses. When we're no longer responsible for making everything turn out according to our preferences, we can engage more fully with whatever actually unfolds before us. Think of how this might transform your relationship with tomorrow's uncertainties. Instead of lying awake rehearsing all the things that might go wrong, or all the ways you need to perform perfectly, you could simply rest in the knowledge that you'll meet whatever arises with the best wisdom and skill available to you in that moment. This doesn't guarantee specific outcomes, but it does guarantee that you'll face challenges from a place of centeredness rather than anxiety. The Emperor discovered that this shift from outcome-focused living to process-focused living creates what he called philosophical freedom. When our sense of success no longer depends on controlling external circumstances, we become free to respond creatively to whatever life presents. When our worth isn't tied to achieving particular results, we can take appropriate risks without being paralyzed by fear of failure. When our peace doesn't require others to behave in specific ways, we can love more openly and authentically. This freedom naturally expresses itself through what Marcus Aurelius called the practice of generous interpretation. Rather than assuming the worst about others' motivations, we can choose to see their actions in the most charitable light that honesty allows. The colleague who seems dismissive might be preoccupied with personal struggles. The family member who appears selfish might be protecting themselves in the only way they know how. The stranger who acts rudely might be having the worst day of their year. This generous interpretation doesn't make us naive or prevent us from setting appropriate boundaries. Rather, it allows us to respond to difficult people from a place of strength and understanding, rather than defensiveness and reactivity. The Emperor found that this approach often brings out the best in others, while certainly bringing out the best in ourselves. Perhaps there's someone in your life right now who has been particularly challenging lately. As you rest tonight, you might experiment with seeing their behaviour through this lens of generous interpretation. What pain or fear might be driving their difficult actions? What would it feel like to respond to them tomorrow not from your own hurt or frustration, but from a place of genuine compassion and wisdom? This practice of generous interpretation extends naturally to how we view our own mistakes and shortcomings. The emperor understood that harsh self-judgment creates a kind of internal civil war that exhausts the soul without producing genuine improvement. When we attack ourselves for failing to live up to our ideals, we often become more entrenched in the very patterns we're trying to change. But when we observe our failures with the same compassionate curiosity we might show a child learning to walk, real growth becomes possible. The key insight is that we're all beginners in the art of being human. No matter how much wisdom we've accumulated, no matter how many insights we've had, each moment presents new opportunities to practice presence, patience, and understanding. The person who has been meditating for decades is still learning how to be peaceful. The individual who has studied philosophy for years is still discovering how to be wise. We're all students in the same school, all working with the same fundamental challenges of consciousness. This perspective creates what Aurelius called philosophical humility, a recognition that wisdom is not a possession we acquire, but a way of remaining open to learning from every experience. The difficult conversation that didn't go well becomes a teacher about communication. The decision that led to unexpected consequences becomes a lesson in discernment. The emotion that caught us off guard becomes an opportunity to understand our own inner landscape more clearly. From this humility flows a natural quality of curiosity about life's unfolding. Instead of pretending we already know how things should go, we can approach each day with genuine interest in what we might discover. Instead of rigidly defending our opinions, we can hold our views lightly enough to modify them when new information emerges. Instead of fearing change, we can welcome it as an opportunity to practice adaptability and trust. The emperor found that this curious approach to life naturally leads to what he called the discipline of appreciation, though this goes far beyond simply counting our blessings. This is more like a fundamental orientation toward existence itself, a recognition that the mere fact of being conscious represents an extraordinary gift that we can never fully deserve or completely understand. Even in this very moment, countless gifts surround you. The language that allows these ideas to travel from one mind to another, the technology that makes this communication possible, the countless generations of human beings who developed the concepts we're exploring, the biological processes that sustain your awareness without any conscious effort on your part, the quiet safety of your resting place that allows for this peaceful contemplation. These represent just a tiny fraction of the miraculous collaboration that makes each moment possible. This edidness within layers recognition of our end leads to what Marcus Aurelius considered of support and cooperation naturally, one of philosophy's most practical fruits, the ability to contribute joyfully to the common good. When we truly understand how much we've received from others, generosity stops feeling like an obligation and becomes a natural expression of gratitude. When we recognize our fundamental interconnectedness with all life, serving others stops feeling like sacrifice and becomes a form of enlightened self-interest. The emperor understood that this service doesn't require grand gestures or dramatic sacrifices. Often it simply means bringing our best qualities to ordinary interactions. The patience we practice while waiting in line contributes to the overall peace of our community. The kindness we show to someone having a difficult day creates ripples of goodwill that may extend far beyond what we can trace. The integrity we maintain in small matters strengthens the fabric of trust that holds society together. Tonight you might reflect on the various ways you've already contributed to others' well-being today, perhaps without even noticing. The courtesy you showed to service workers, the attention you gave to someone who needed to be heard, the competence you brought to your responsibilities. These seemingly small acts of consideration represent genuine forms of service. The emperor would have recognized these ordinary expressions of virtue as no less valuable than the great deeds that get remembered in history books. This appreciation for small acts of goodness connects to another dimension of Aurelius's wisdom, his understanding that transformation happens through accumulation rather than revolution. Just as rivers carve canyons through the patient persistence of countless drops of water, character develops through the steady repetition of small choices made in accordance with our highest values. The person who practices patience in traffic eventually becomes a patient person. The individual who chooses honesty in minor matters develops into someone whose word can be trusted completely. This gradual approach to development has a quality of gentleness that makes sustainable change possible. Instead of trying to revolutionize ourselves overnight through sheer willpower, we can focus on making slightly better choices moment by moment. Instead of demanding perfection immediately, we can appreciate incremental progress. Instead of being discouraged by setbacks, we can see them as natural parts of any learning process. Perhaps this understanding can inform your own relationship with whatever qualities you're trying to cultivate. Whether you're working on becoming more patient, more courageous, more compassionate, or more wise, the path forward involves countless small opportunities to practice these virtues in daily life. Each moment of choosing response over reaction, understanding over judgment, presence over distraction, these represent steps along the journey toward becoming who you most deeply want to be. The Emperor's approach to character development was remarkably practical and sustainable. He didn't try to transform himself through dramatic spiritual practices or extreme disciplines. Instead, he used the ordinary circumstances of daily life as his training ground, finding opportunities to practice philosophical principles in every interaction, every decision, every challenge that arose. This approach made wisdom accessible and virtue achievable, not as distant ideals, but as living realities that could be cultivated through patient daily practice. This integration of philosophy with practical living creates what Aurelius called embodied wisdom, understanding that expresses itself naturally through our actions rather than remaining merely intellectual. When patience becomes our automatic response to delay, when compassion arises spontaneously towards suffering, when acceptance emerges naturally in the face of circumstances we cannot control, then philosophical study has ripened into lived understanding. The Emperor recognized that this embodiment process often happens below the threshold of conscious awareness. Like plants that grow steadily without our noticing daily progress, wisdom develops through gradual integration rather than sudden breakthrough. The insights we contemplate during quiet moments like this one slowly reshape the neural pathways that govern our automatic responses, creating new patterns that serve us better in challenging situations. Tonight, as these philosophical reflections settle into the deeper layers of consciousness, they begin their quiet work of integration. The perspectives you've entertained, the questions you've considered, the possibilities you've imagined, all of these contribute to the gradual transformation that unfolds through patient practice rather than forced effort. Like seeds planted in fertile soil, these insights will grow in their own timing, emerging when circumstances call forth the wisdom they contain. The beauty of Marcus Aurelius's approach is that it honours both the urgency of our desire for growth and the organic timing that governs all sustainable development. We can be passionate about becoming wiser, kinder, and more peaceful, while also trusting the natural processes through which such qualities actually develop. This balance between aspiration and acceptance, between effort and surrender, between individual initiative and cosmic cooperation, represents perhaps the most sophisticated achievement of philosophical maturity. As sleep draws nearer, these ancient teachings reveal their most intimate gift, the recognition that wisdom is not something foreign that we must acquire from outside ourselves, but rather something essential that we can discover within our own experience. The capacity for peace exists within you right now, perhaps hidden beneath surface turbulence but nonetheless real and accessible. The potential for joy lives in your own heart, waiting to be uncovered through the removal of unnecessary burdens rather than the addition of external pleasures. The Emperor's philosophy points us not toward some distant achievement, but toward the immediate recognition of what has always been present. The awareness through which you're receiving these words is the same consciousness that can contemplate the vastness of the universe and find peace in a single breath. The intelligence that can understand complex philosophical concepts is the same wisdom that knows how to love, how to forgive, and how to rest in simple appreciation of existence itself. This recognition doesn't diminish the value of continued learning and growth. Rather, it provides the stable foundation from which genuine development can occur. When we know that our essential nature is already whole and worthy, we can engage in the project of becoming without the desperate urgency that often undermines our efforts. When we trust that peace is our natural state, we can work skillfully to remove the obstacles that obscure it without the anxiety that creates additional obstacles. In this gentle space between waking contemplation and sleeping restoration, Marcus Aurelius's teachings reveal their ultimate simplicity. Beneath all the sophisticated concepts and practical applications lies a basic invitation to live with awareness, to respond with wisdom, and to rest in the fundamental okayness that exists at the heart of all experience. This isn't complicated philosophy requiring years of study, but rather the most natural thing in the world, as available to a child as to a scholar, as accessible in this moment as at any other time. The Emperor's wisdom whispers to us across the centuries, not with demands or expectations, but with gentle encouragement and patient understanding. His insights accompany us not as burdens to carry, but as companions for the journey, ready to offer guidance when needed, and content to remain silent when silence serves better. And in this quiet companionship, this meeting of ancient wisdom and present awareness, we discover that philosophy's greatest gift is not knowledge but peace, not answers but presence, not achievement but the simple recognition of what we have always been. As consciousness gradually releases its grip on deliberate thought and begins its nightly journey toward restorative depths, these philosophical currents continue their gentle work, weaving understanding into the fabric of dreams, preparing insights that will emerge tomorrow as natural responses to life's invitations, settling into the quiet places where real transformation occurs beyond the reach of effort or intention. The gentle Emperor's wisdom finds its perfect home in these liminal moments, these sacred transitions between states of consciousness, these opportunities to practice the art of letting go that serves us so well in both sleeping and waking life. And in this peaceful convergence of ancient insight and present rest, Marcus Aurelius' greatest teaching completes itself. That true philosophy is not thinking about life, but learning to live it with grace, awareness, and infinite appreciation for the magnificent mystery of being conscious at all. The gentle wisdom of Marcus Aurelius carries us now toward perhaps his most profound understanding of what it means to be truly awake within the dream of existence. The Emperor recognized that most of us live in a kind of philosophical sleepwalking, moving through our days on autopilot, reacting to circumstances rather than responding from wisdom, caught in patterns of thought and behavior that we never consciously chose. But awakening to our true nature doesn't require dramatic enlightenment experiences or years of monastic discipline. It can happen in the simplest moments, like this very instant of quiet listening. This awakening begins with what Aurelius called the practice of conscious breathing, though not in the way we might expect. He wasn't advocating complicated breathing techniques or forced meditation practices. Rather, he discovered that simply noticing the breath as it naturally flows creates a doorway into present moment awareness. Each inhalation brings life into your body without any effort from you. Each exhalation releases what is no longer needed without any forcing. This simple rhythm, which has continued since your first moment of life, represents a perfect teacher in the art of receiving and releasing. Right now, as you lie there, your breath continues its ancient dance. Notice how it requires no management from you, no conscious direction, no anxious oversight. It simply flows, responding to your body's needs with perfect intelligence. The Emperor found great comfort in contemplating this automatic wisdom that sustains life moment by moment. If consciousness can trust the body to breathe without interference, perhaps it can also trust the processes. This trust larger intelligence that guides all natural in natural intelligence extends into what Marcus Aurelius understood as the art of philosophical surrender. This isn't the surrender of defeat or resignation, but rather the surrender of unnecessary struggle. Like a swimmer who stops fighting the current and instead learns to move with the flow of the river, we can learn to align our efforts with the deeper currents that already move through existence. This doesn't make us passive, but rather allows our actions to be more effective, because they're supported by forces larger than the individual will. The Emperor practiced this surrender daily through what he called morning intentions and evening reflections. Each dawn, he would set gentle intentions for how he wanted to show up in the world, not as rigid demands, but as soft guidelines that could adapt to whatever circumstances arose. Each evening he would review the day with compassionate honesty, noticing where he had acted from wisdom and where he'd been caught in unconscious patterns. This daily rhythm of intention and reflection created a kind of philosophical breathing that kept his awareness fresh and flexible. Perhaps tonight represents one such evening reflection for you, an opportunity to review the day not with harsh judgment, but with gentle curiosity. Where did you act from your highest values? Where did you respond with presence rather than reactivity? Where did you choose understanding over judgment? These moments of alignment with your deeper nature deserve recognition and appreciation. And where you fell short of your ideals, these too deserve attention, not as sources of shame, but as teachers pointing toward growth. The emperor understood that this practice of gentle self-examination naturally leads to what he called the discipline of forgiveness, though his approach went far beyond simply pardoning others for their mistakes. True forgiveness, he discovered, is more like a fundamental recognition that everyone is doing their best from their current level of understanding, including ourselves. When we truly see that all harmful actions arise from confusion rather than evil, from pain rather than malice, from fear rather than courage, forgiveness becomes less of an effort and more of a natural response. This doesn't mean we should accept harmful behaviour or fail to protect ourselves and others from genuine danger. Rather, it means we can respond to difficulties from a place of clarity rather than emotional reactivity, strength rather than defensiveness, wisdom rather than unconscious pattern. The parent who sets firm boundaries with love rather than anger, the employee who addresses workplace problems with skill rather than resentment, the friend who maintains appropriate distance from toxic behaviour, while still holding compassion for the person caught in destructive patterns. Tonight, if there's anyone in your life toward whom you've been carrying resentment or hurt, you might experiment with seeing them through the emperor's eyes of understanding. What pain might be driving their difficult behaviour? What fear might be motivating their harmful choices? What confusion might be clouding their ability to act from love? This perspective doesn't excuse their actions or require you to maintain relationships that aren't healthy, but it can free you from the burden of carrying anger that ultimately hurts you more than anyone else. This practice of understanding extends naturally to our relationship with our own mistakes and limitations. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the futility of harsh self-criticism, recognizing that attacking ourselves for being imperfect is like punishing a child for not being able to run before learning to walk. We are all beginners in the art of conscious living, all students in the same curriculum of learning to respond with wisdom rather than react from unconscious programming. The emperor developed what we might call a philosophy of gentle progress, understanding that real change happens through patient repetition rather than forceful effort. Like water gradually wearing smooth a rough stone, daily practice of philosophical principles slowly transforms consciousness without the violence and backlash that often accompany attempts at rapid self-improvement. Each moment offers a new opportunity to choose response over reaction, presence over distraction, understanding over judgment. From this gentle approach to personal growth flows what Aurelius considered one of wisdom's most practical gifts, the ability to find peace within activity, rather than only during quiet moments. The emperor ruled an empire, led armies, dealt with constant political pressures, yet maintained what he called an inner sanctuary that remained untouched by external turbulence. This inner peace isn't something we create through effort, but rather something we discover by removing the mental habits that obscure it. Think of consciousness like a clear mountain lake. When winds stir the surface, the water appears choppy and murky, but the depths remain clear and still. Thoughts and emotions are like weather patterns moving across the surface of awareness, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but the deeper nature of consciousness remains undisturbed. Learning to rest in these depths while still functioning effectively at the surface represents perhaps the most valuable skill we can develop. Perhaps right now you can sense this quality of deeper stillness beneath whatever mental activity might be occurring. Notice that even as thoughts about the day arise, there's something that observes these thoughts without being agitated by them. Even as your body settles into different positions, there's something that witnesses these physical changes without being altered by them. This observing presence, this stable awareness, represents your true nature, the part of you that has remained essentially unchanged throughout all the experiences of your life. The emperor called this stable presence the ruling center, the aspect of consciousness that makes choices and holds values and maintains continuity of identity over time. Unlike thoughts and feelings, which arise and pass away like clouds in the sky, this deeper awareness remains constant. Learning to identify with this stable presence rather than with the changing contents of consciousness became, for Marcus Aurelius, the foundation of all genuine peace and wisdom. This recognition naturally leads to what the emperor understood as the practice of conscious choice. In each moment, we face countless micro-decisions about where to place our attention, how to interpret events, what meaning to assign to circumstances. These choices may seem automatic, but with practice we can learn to make them more consciously. Instead of automatically assuming the worst when someone acts rudely, we can choose to wonder what might be troubling them. Instead of immediately feeling victimized when plans don't work out, we can choose to look for opportunities within the unexpected situation. The power of conscious choice becomes particularly relevant during the transition towards sleep. How often do we lie in bed rehearsing the day's difficulties or anxiously anticipating tomorrow's challenges? These mental habits feel automatic, but they're actually choices we can learn to make differently. Instead of feeding worry through mental repetition, we can choose to practice gratitude for what went well. Instead of projecting fears onto an uncertain future, we can choose to rest in present moment safety. This doesn't mean forcing artificial positivity or suppressing legitimate concerns. Rather, it means developing the discernment to distinguish between useful mental activity and mere mental noise. The thoughts that lead to constructive action deserve attention. The mental loops that create anxiety without producing solutions can be gently released, like letting go of a rope we've been gripping unnecessarily tightly. And so, dear friend, as Marcus Aurelius's gentle wisdom settles into the quiet spaces of your mind, remember that you carry within you the same capacity for peace, understanding, and grace that guided this philosopher emperor through his own challenges. His teachings don't ask you to become someone different, but simply to recognize the wisdom that has always been present within you, waiting patiently like a candle in a dark room, ready to illuminate your path with the smallest intention to see clearly. Tonight, let these ancient insights work their quiet magic as consciousness naturally transitions toward rest. The Emperor's philosophy will continue its gentle influence even in sleep, weaving itself into dreams and restoration, preparing to emerge tomorrow as spontaneous compassion, effortless patience, and the kind of deep contentment that comes from living in harmony with the natural flow of existence itself. Sweet dreams, and may you wake with the quiet strength of someone who has touched, however briefly, the timeless peace that Marcus Aurelius discovered within the human heart.